Jim's journey through space and time formed a perfect circle because he spent most of his early years in the Inwood Hills section of Manhattan, and there he returned where he spent his last year and a half. I had the privilege of moving him up there and eating in a local coffee shop after, and as we walked around the neighborhood, he showed me the candy store where the guy caught them stealing candy, and where his basketball court was, and it was a beautiful journey to see where he was and always will be. Myth, ritual, and Billy Wolfram's reality were now merging, and he surmised that this was the beginning of his quest. He went into his room and grabbed a t-shirt. He wrapped the silver object in the shirt to keep it from smudging, but before doing this, he raised it again up to the light. The blade had a dull point and was hardly the size of a sword, but the fact that it had always been hidden away in a latched chest of polished wood gave it an ageless fascination. It would suffice for the undertaking, the quest that he had planned. The only thing left was to stash it in his closet and wait for the cover of night. He had no idea how long the super's newly laid cement would take to harden, but his nightly hopes depended on at least 4 hours. His mother returned a little before 6 p.m., bringing Billy, as she did nightly, his dinner on a large silver tray covered by a silver dome. She prepared his dinner while she was cooking for the priests in the rectory, always starting on Billy's a little early. This way she could shuttle it over to the boy while the clergyman's meals were in the oven. The silver tray and its dome belonged to the rectory, which was directly across the street from their apartment. She was never late getting back and thus never burned the meal of 14 hungry Jesuits. However, she always cringed a little as she left, sad at the sight of her son stoically eating his dinner alone. "I'll be back in an hour and a half at the most," she would say, "so you make sure you get to your homework after you finish the meal." It was a strange verbal idiosyncrasies of Billy's mother to leave out salient words in sentences like "finish meal" instead of "finish your meal." I actually added "your meal" because I thought it was a typo. Billy liked this affectation and never questioned his mother about it. It had the sound of Neanderthals or Ingrid Bergman speaking in the movies. "There'll be no working on homework tonight, for a fair quest awaits this knight errant," Billy thought to himself as he wolfed down the chicken, rice, and vegetables she had left him. Years later, as Billy first heard the hippie bromide, "You are what you eat," he was struck by the fact that for close to 10 years he ate the exact same dinners as the men of the cloth across the street. He shuddered to think that, by that dictum, he was part Jesuit. He threw the empty plate in the sink, ran some water over it, and sped into the back room. Darkness had arrived, and there was no sign of the super or his family in the backyard. There was always the chance that the handyman could be working in his basement shop, however, so Billy wore a dark jacket and laced up his sneakers for quiet stealth. He grabbed the silver knife from the closet, keeping it in his t-shirt sheath, and stuck his key in his pocket. He eagerly made it down the stairs unseen, taking the wooden steps beside the mailboxes down to the backyard. Passing the rows of overflowing garbage pails, the smell of boiled cabbage overwhelming all other rotting food groups, Billy gingerly approached the freshly laid square. Wish I could talk like Jim. Freshly laid. He had arrived with little time to spare. The cement was setting fast. He laid the t-shirt beside him as he knelt reverently and removed the blade. Excalibur shone in the moon and window light as he raised it up. He wondered if there would be consequences for this reversal of myth, inserting the sword rather than removing it. Somewhere in the adult versions of this tale, he thought, this question of how the sword was first placed in the rock might have been answered. Myths do not often bother with casual details, however. Things just seemed to happen, and this explained Billy's fascination with them. With both hands, Billy drove his mother's fine silver place knife into the hardening substance. It went as deep as he'd hoped, the blade disappearing into the concrete and myth in his mind. A mist enveloped the suddenly lacustrine landscape of Billy's back alley. The handle was all that remained visible. By morning, only the worthy one would be able to remove it.